Welcome back to Symbiotic Vibration. My name is Evan, and today I'll be speaking about what it felt like to be told that I was dying and I didn't have much time left on this planet at 23 years of age. This is a part of a short series that I'm creating called the Brain Tumour Diaries. If you haven't caught the first two episodes, you can do so up there somewhere in this playlist. I've already made two, and I plan to make maybe two or three more before we move on to our next series, and our next series, and our next series. But anyway, the goal and the aim with this series is to try and keep these videos between 10 to 15 minutes. So I won't get too deeply into any part of these topics, but if you do, as always, if you have any questions or you want me to expand on anything, then please do. And a little quick question before we get into the remainder of the video that I did pose to my Instagram and TikTok followers earlier. So if you're not following me there, you can do on Instagram, TikTok, Symbiotic Vibration. And yeah, I suppose I give everybody a little background detail as to what I'm doing here. It's a bit more personalized and I get to use profanity, etc. because, you get demonetized on YouTube for profanity. Not that I am being monetized right now. So if you did want to help support me and help make my dreams and passions come true, then please do consider subscribing. We're trying to build a beautiful community here of souls that want to help other souls and, flush out these comment sections with a lot of love. So yeah, much appreciate your support. But the question that I posed to these followers earlier was that if you were told today that your time was limited, then how would you choose to live? Who would you choose to be? I'll give you some time for some reflective music like I did to my Instagram followers. And what I said to them was that your time is finite. Time is finite within this life you're living. Now, I do believe that we live an infinite amount of times, possibly, and that we are consistently recycling into other bodies and other experiences to learn and to learn for consciousness, because we all are a subjective part of said consciousness, in my opinion, at least. So I don't believe that your time is finite in general, but perhaps in this life it is. And so, as always, I promote you to build your life around your dreams and your passions. It's not easy, but if you do it day by day, then eventually you can build a life that suits your dreams and your desires and your passions. And hopefully you can do so without burning out. It's not easy. I work and I try to fit in all my goals and all the other things around it, and it's just not easy, and life was never meant to be. But yeah, all I'm telling you to do is try your best to be yourself. So a quick background story, if you've never watched any of my videos before. I'm Evan. I was diagnosed with a brain tumor when I was 23. I was ill for 6 months prior, from 22 into 23. Eventually would be diagnosed with a brain tumor and given a finite amount of time to live. It was extremely difficult, and I suffered and I suffered and I suffered, and eventually I would come very close to death and have to have an emergency surgery to have that removed. And yeah, the recovery was a whole other thing, and we'll get into that in a post series later on. But yeah, that's a quick synopsis of what has happened to me within this story thus far. And it's now been 7.5 years. So I've been through a tumultuous amount of healing, and, it's still always ongoing. But, I can sit here and reflect from a healthier place and a balanced place, instead of a place that will bring me into internal collapse, which happened the first time I tried to start YouTube. How hard was it to experience all of this at 23? It's a question that I have posed to myself here on the screen behind you. And it was extremely difficult at that age. At that age, most people don't have a sense of identity yet. It's more so you're still trying to figure out the world, you're still trying to figure out yourself. For me, I was trying to experiment with many different forms of psychedelics to try to connect to the universe, to try to understand what it was that was happening. My main goal in life was to hang around with my friends and play music, listen to Pink Floyd and watch Joe Rogan videos to try and gather more information with regards to what was happening here. And so to lose all of that within what felt like an instant, thankfully, I had 6 months of early phase suffering. So I knew there was something wrong with me. And some people thought I was going insane. Some professionals thought I was making psychosymptomatic symptoms come out of the ether. But nonetheless, I was validated by my diagnosis, which was actually quite calming in a strange sense. But, that didn't last so long. And then eventually I had nothing. I had no identity anymore. I was afraid to go outside. I felt ashamed to go into the public because everybody knew about it. And yeah, it was extremely difficult to experience these things at such a young age. And if you want me to expand on anything, please do let a question, because I tried to do this quickly. But let's just say it was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. And let's also say that I'm very grateful that it happened, because what I've taken from it has been incredible and exponential over the years. So I wouldn't take it back for the world, but let's just say it was devastating to experience that at a young age. Trauma responses. So my trauma response of choice was dissociation, to freeze, to become numb. I get to reflect on that and tell you that now. I did not know what that meant when I was within that trauma response. I actually would tell people that I felt so strong that all of this pain, all of this news wasn't penetrating me. It wasn't making me feel sad, because I was just so strong, and my desire to survive was too strong. Now, my desire to survive was strong. However, I repressed every emotion that I could, and that's a protective measure, and we will get into that later on. So if you are feeling like you're numb and you're ill right now, or you're in pain and you feel numb and you feel detached from your identity or dissociated from this situation, then it's plausible that you might be within a trauma response, and there's a protective part of you trying to keep you safe, and that's absolutely okay. However, I would advise you to perhaps seek professional help with regards to this, because these professionals, if you find the right ones, can help you to contextualize what it is that's happening to you. It most certainly helped me over the years, and thankfully I have some beautiful friends out there that are also incredible and help me along the way with regards to trauma and my responses to such a thing. Now, obviously, it's not just freeze. There's obviously the fight, the flight, the freeze, the fawn, and a myriad of other trauma responses that can happen. So I will expand on these as best I can in a future series. But again, if you do have any questions, do let me know. And the next thing I wanted to talk about was the guilt that I felt being the baby in the family. And I don't know if any of you watching this who may be going through something right now feel similar, but for me, it was devastating to feel like I was a burden on my own family, to not only pause my life and rip it apart, but to take my parents' identities, my brother's identity, and wash them away with my own illness now. And I felt an extreme level of guilt with regards to that. And to even further elaborate what I'm talking about, I also had an impending death on the way, and I was very close to it at some points, most certainly towards the end of my illness. And I felt ashamed of that, and I also felt extremely guilty, because if I was to die, well, then I would have to leave a hole in my parents' lives, my brother's life, my auntie's life, my cousins' lives, my friends' lives. And that was very difficult and heavy to carry at the time. And to be honest, it still is when I think about it, because, in my opinion, we are a conglomerate of all versions of ourselves that have lived, and possibly all versions of ourselves that will live. And I mean, every version. So all of those emotions, all of those traumatic experiences are stored within our nervous systems. And I'm still getting to grips with all of this energy that's trapped within me. I'm doing a fantastic job, in my opinion. And I spend a lot of time thinking and feeling and allowing things to come true, and integrating and digesting and allowing to float off back into the atmosphere with love. But that's one of the things that hurts the most, is that experience of feeling guilty about the loss that I would now provide to my family. So we'll leave it at that. But if you're experiencing anything like that, well, I would also tell you to, seek some help, seek some support. And if you're struggling to find some support, I'm always here. And I'm sure that the people that are joining day by day are here for you too. So questioning belief and faith. This is a big narrative within my illness, as I'm sure any of you who are going through anything right now that perhaps is existential or terrifying will have gone through also. I suppose, as I had said earlier, I was questioning the universe prior to my illness, experimenting with certain psychedelics and trying to enhance my connection to all that is. And I was starting to develop some belief that there was a higher power. Having grown up in a Catholic society, I had banished that version of God from my existence, and I felt like an atheist for some time. So these practices at the time were really starting to connect me to do what I felt was the universe, which I still do. You know, the universe, the higher power, one source consciousness, whatever you want to call it, God, anything you want to call it. I believe everybody is praying to the same thing. We just have different names and different narratives. However, let me get back to this point. While I became ill, while I was told I was dying, I started to resent the sky. I started to shout at it at times and scream profound language and profane language. And because I felt, you know, I've been such a nice person. I've done the best I possibly can here, and you throw this at me. So in my opinion, you know, karma can't be real, and you're not real because I don't deserve this. And, you know, made me very sad and very angry, and I held a lot of resentment, and I didn't believe anything else was there then at this point. I kind of jumped back into apathy and nihilism, and yeah, I felt empty inside. However, as I became closer and closer and closer to death, I started to, you know, feel a certain amount of desperation, and I would look to the sky for help a lot and look internally and, you know, try to figure out what was going on. I was so young, and I think one of the pivotal moments in my life, never mind this period of time, was a near-death experience that I spoke briefly about in the last video, and I won't elaborate on now, but you know, it really brought me closer to what was outside of my body, in a vessel soul kind of a way. And you know, that really helped me to gain faith that something else was happening here, and I can't wait to expand on it in the future. But yeah, let's just say it was a turbulent time with my beliefs and my faith, but eventually I would become very connected to the universe and to everything around me. And it has even further is exasperated. No, that's not the word. Further elaborated with time because of that experience. So periods of severe depression and anger and pain and self-grieving are something that I would imagine happens to everybody throughout an illness or, you know, a severe situation. For me, it was always very confusing. You know, I would wake up one day, I would feel numb, or I would feel a sense of calmness, joy. You know, you're not always the dying person. You develop a normality within anything that's going on in your life. So, you know, if you're in pain every day for 3 months, that pain becomes your normality, so you don't feel it as much. And if something gets worse, you feel that. And you know, it became very depressing, it became isolating. I was full of anger sometimes, you know, full of sadness, but I would repress away a lot of these emotions, like I said. And one of the strangest experiences of having to go through that experience was having to kind of grieve myself, you know, having to say goodbye to myself and having to grieve such a short lifespan at that age was not easy. And I still do feel that, you know, I still feel for those versions of myself. And yeah, it was extremely difficult. And I wrote a lot about it in my diary down there. I also, you know, to go back on what I was saying a minute ago about questioning why me and you know, you don't exist up there. I have something that I wrote. Well, I wrote in big capital letters somewhere in here. Yeah, um, I wrote this. It says, "Why me?" And it was on that day when I was shouting at the sky up there. And you know, I did find the answers. I did find the answers eventually, and I will answer those as a short video at some point too. Existential crisis. Strange thoughts, strange questions flowing in and out of my brain at all times. I say it, I say it a lot on social media and on my YouTube channel. We will push on from these topics eventually, but you know, there's a lot to talk about with regards to what I went through before I can move on to other topics. And one of the things that comes up repeatedly is you know, the questions of who am I and what was I supposed to do here? I feel like I have not really been myself, and I've not done anything, and should I have been more me? What matters to me? And, I'll say it again, I'll say it in almost every video. You should be questioning yourself. You should be asking yourself who you are and where you are, why you are, what matters to you, and building your life around the answers, because you don't want to get to the end and feel like you had watched my video and I told you to do these things and you still haven't done it. Believe me, you should. And now on to a more positive topic, mindfulness. So when I was in Canada, I was going through extreme pressure. I was trying to work all day as well as deal with all of these symptoms that were arising without being able to tell anybody because I was so afraid. And I started to look elsewhere for some skills that I could use to try and help me. And at the time, I'd been reading books about spirituality and trying to connect to a higher source, and then the word mindfulness was being used a lot back then, and I mean, I suppose it still is. It's gotten to the point where it's over diluted now. It's a beautiful technique that I suppose, if you read a modern day spiritual person, sometimes you'll hear, be mindful, as if you can just switch a button on the side of your head and all of a sudden your thoughts dissolve and you're just in this bath of serenity. It's not that easy. It's a lifetime skill, and I can attest to that because whilst my mind was so loud that I couldn't hear anything outside of it, I started to read a book called Wherever You Go, There You Are. And if you have a chance to read it, it's by Jon Kabat-Zinn, and it's a really powerful book. I haven't read it since then, really, so I can't tell you if it's still relevant to today, but it helped me so much back then. And I would just watch the birds and I would listen to my footsteps and I would listen to the wind and listen to the ocean and listen to the river. And day by day, I was starting to become the observer of my mind rather than unraveling myself within all of these erratic thoughts. I was above it and I was listening to the sounds and I was listening to the birds and I was watching everything outside of my head. And I still practice that autonomically at this point because again, like I said, it's a skill you can develop and practice over time. So if you viewer are struggling right now and you're going through anything, or your mind is so rapid and hyper aroused that it's tormenting you, just know that you are not your mind. You are a soul within your body, and your mind is doing the best it possibly can, and it's possible for you to rise above it, but it takes a lot of practice. And yeah, I would go and research mindfulness techniques and perhaps read Jon Kabat-Zinn's Wherever You Go, There You Are, and hopefully it will bring you on a beautiful journey. And here's the beautiful thing, eventually I would have to inevitably accept that I'm dying, and it is happening. I'm starting to have seizures. I'm starting to feel the life force drain from my soul. I can feel it draining day by day, and I know I'm dying, and that's it. This could happen now. Every time I went for a walk, every time I went to the swimming pool, I was dying in my head. Like, I was having panic attacks day by day, night by night, moment by moment. My heart was skipping beats every couple of minutes. Yeah, it was becoming a terrifying experience, and I really tried to hold out and repress as much of that fear as possible. But yeah, it was almost impossible towards the end. And inevitably, I would get to a point where, I had to truly accept that this is it. I'm pretty sure I'm going here. And I was writing a lot in my diary about that. Even though I still had faith and belief that I could make it through, I did feel like I was on the way out. And yeah, what an experience to have to go through at that age, but I'm also extremely grateful for it, because the sense of calm and relief that came with truly being able to sit down for a year or so and try my best to allow myself to accept, but eventually getting to a point where I felt so comfortable with the idea of dying that it was okay, and it was quite serene. It was quite tranquil to be within that mindset back then. And most certainly going in for my brain surgery, I was so calm. I was like, oh, it's okay. It's okay, we've done all the work now, so let's just go and see what happens. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. If it does, it does. And thankfully I made it to the other side, and I'm so happy for that. And I'm really proud to be able to come here after unraveling all of this traumatic experience and trying my best to synopsize it into these little chapters for you. And I hope that it inspires you if you are suffering in any way. And I just, yeah, I hope that I can be that light at the end of a dark tunnel for you, just to show you that it can be better and you can make it and you can do it, and, you know, to have some belief in yourself. And I think that's about it, really. So I just wanted to let you know that, and thank you for getting here if you're still watching it. And, you know, I love you all. And yeah, like and subscribe and help me build this beautiful community. So that's about it, really. I suppose I'll pose that question to you one more time before I go, you know. So if your time is limited right now, which it is in this life anyway, who are you supposed to be? Who are you going to be? Good night. God bless you all. Good day, good night, good morning, good evening, whatever it is. Goodbye now. I'll see you on the next one.